the X-E1 or how I was wrong.
Saw you in that corner with your dirty shoe. Let me put your apron on, and there's a long line waiting for you. What can I do for you? She said in front of my face, so I couldn't breathe. The sweet smile in your face, but I know that you're just trying to be nice to me. Daisy, Daisy, you gave me a hazy feeling lately. Can you stay with me while we pursue a latte UK? Ooh, stay by my side, no more feeling blue.
Welcome back, OMGC family. So in our last video, we discussed the Canon 5D, and by we, I mean me, discussed the Canon 5D. I had such a great time shooting that camera because I forced this discipline on myself to shoot JPEG only. And I'm not even going to lie, it was a revelation. And I wanted to be able to do that again. I take my camera literally everywhere. Like, I don't leave my house without my camera. So I like something that I can just put in my bag and go to the grocery store and grab chicken and come home. And the 5D is not that camera. What other company is better known for color outside of Canon than Fuji? I did shoot the Fuji X100V, and there were some photos from that camera in my Michigan video. And I was really unhappy with it. I took it on that one trip. I didn't like the RAWs. I didn't like the JPEGs. I was just kind of like blah about the whole thing. I didn't even think that the ergos were like, I don't know. It just felt a little sterile. And ultimately, I took it on that vacation and I sold it right after. Like, I didn't keep it for very long at all. And I didn't regret it. I felt really good about the decision. And I moved on with my life. Of course, now thinking through Fuji cameras, I was like, what is the camera that will get me into the system again? Let me experiment. Like, maybe I missed something, but has like the lowest overhead in terms of cost. And the Fuji X-E1 came up in an auction on eBay at a pretty reasonable cost, like still overpriced, I think, probably, as pretty much every Fuji camera is at this point. There's just a lot of hype around it, which also I react negatively to. Like, I tend to like see a crowd go this way and I go the other way, for better or worse. But I was like, I want to try this camera. I want to get into it. Lucy Lumen has this camera. She loves it. And I was like, I gotta give it a go. My first impressions of this camera were horrendous. I felt it was slow. The EBF was bad. The autofocus was bad. I was really like unhappy with the JPEGs. I'm not unhappy, but like they weren't impressing me that much. I was kind of like, ugh. And what happens to me sometimes is I will pick up a camera. If I don't like it, relatively quickly, I will just not review it. I'll just put it down and be like, yeah, I'm just not going to spend 2 weeks with this camera. I'm just not enjoying it enough. And I thought that was going to be the case with the X-E1. Well, let's start at the top and end at the end. We'll go through some specs first, okay? So this camera is from 2013. It has a 16 megapixel APS-C X-Trans 1 sensor, the first sensor. It is ISO 200 to 1600 with obviously expansion capabilities, which I did not explore, but it goes down to 100 and then up to something insane like 25,600. It has RAW and JPEG capabilities, contrast detect autofocus. It has an onboard flash, delightful, which you can bounce. It has this cute little boop. It also has an electronic and mechanical shutter, which remains on all their cameras to this day, and you can put it into an automatic mode where it will switch between the two, which is quite nice. It has a shutter speed of 1/30th of a second, not 1/30th, 30 seconds to 1/4000th of a second. It doesn't go up to like 1/8000th of a second, which is kind of interesting. Makes sense though. It's like not their high-end body. It takes SD cards. It takes readily available batteries. Like many third-party manufacturers still produce this battery. I use Wasabi. I will put a link down below. It is an affiliate link. You do want a few of them. This doesn't have the greatest battery life. No big shock. I mean, it's a smaller form factor and therefore the battery size can only be so much. It has auto ISO, which is fantastic, but you can't like delineate a minimum shutter speeds. You can't use Fuji X Studio with it, the RAW Studio, so like you can't design your own presets or profiles or anything like that, which you can do starting with like the X-T2 line or the X-Trans 2 sensor. It does have a silent mode, which is really nice, but and there are things that don't work in the silent mode, like there's like a weird thing with the flash. It is really small and light and compact, which I adore. It is not weather sealed though. It does have this little switch down here. This controls the focus mode, which this just gets to a broader point. Why do we love Fuji cameras? Well, all the buttons and all the dials. This has, your exposure comp on the top, your ISO is easily dialed in here with a button. It has a quick menu. It has your shutter speeds on the top. It's a wonderful ergonomic camera. I do absolutely love the way it feels, and it has this like really, really nice toggle wheel. I mean, I can't speak tonight, but this grip does give it a nice little bit of something to hold on to, but it's terribly designed because when you use it, you have to take it off every time you want to change the battery or take out the SD card, which is not going to be infrequently because batteries don't last forever. So that's a little bit of a frustrating design flaw, in my opinion. Additionally, the tripod mount on here is off center, so that can be kind of weird and annoying as well. It does have really solid ISO performance through the range. So, ISO 200 or whatever to 1600, all of it is entirely usable, in my opinion. That is the benefit of having a slightly larger sensor. The APS-C sensor performs really well here. It has exposure bracketing and it has ISO bracketing. It does have dynamic range options. There'll be like DR 100 through 400, so 100, 200, and 400. That's just kind of like a computational photography piece where it gives you broader dynamic range, and it actually works really well in here. I was super, super impressed that this 2013 camera would operate that well. Shouldn't be surprised though, because they were kind of doing that with their super CCD sensor that they had in, for example, the Fuji S5 Pro that I reviewed. Because I was like entering this system with a little bit of a bad aftertaste from some of the more modern Fuji cameras, I didn't want to go in heavy. So I got the cheapest lenses that I could find. Now, having shot Fuji many times in the past, I had never considered the XC lineup of lenses. Like, they're the cheaper, more plasticky lenses. I assumed because they were cheap, they wouldn't be good. But, leave it to Fuji to actually produce great glass, even on their most entry-level lenses. I got the X-E35 and the X-E15 to 45 millimeter lenses, and I was like blown away. They were really, really good lenses for the money. They're not weather sealed. They're definitely plasticky and, more cheaply made. But I dropped one. It didn't break or shatter. I wouldn't feel as confident about it as I would their XF line of lenses. But I was really impressed. I thought, you know what? I could be totally happy with this setup. I didn't love the power zoom on the 15 to 45, but honestly, it wasn't like the worst. And, if you're trying to get a precise zooming equivalent, it is a stepping lens. You don't see what focal length it's at in your viewfinder or anything like that. So I don't know. It's give or take, but it is really nice to have that 15 millimeter equivalent field of view, and it is so tiny. I wish I still had them. I ended up not keeping those because I did want to step up to the 18 to 55 lens, which I used. This is a great kit lens. I've always really enjoyed this lens. People have mixed reviews on it, sometimes saying like it's not sharp, blah, blah, blah. I've never had issues. I've had this lens multiple times. I also got so clearly clearly I decided to stick with the system because I did buy quite a few lenses. So now I have the 32 millimeter 1.8 lens, the Zeiss 2 lens. So this is a great lens. I feel like this is a sleeper lens. People kind of, I don't know, panned it. I really like the optical quality. It's very much like a contacts lens, Zeiss contacts kind of design lens with that similar type of bokeh. It's a little bit of a busier bokeh and definitely has a bit more of a cat's eye kind of shape, but I really like that. It has more character. I love the 35 1.4 from Fuji though, and one day I might add that too, but it seems redundant with the 32. This is a 35 millimeter 1.4 Voigtlander M-mount lens that I've adapted on here. I have plenty of lenses I can adapt, but nothing that's super wide because my full frame lenses are not going to be that wide. This is a 17 millimeter 1.4 lens from TT Artisan. TT Artisan actually sent me this lens, and I wasn't sure if I would like it, but it is awesome. It's actually a pretty sharp lens. It has really soft corners. It has a lot of character, and it is definitely not, it's not a modern lens. It doesn't have any kind of edge-to-edge sharpness or sterile modern look to it. It has a very vintage look and a really wonderful sort of, I don't know, it's a texture and a character. And I really enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. I do also have a link to this lens down below. It is cheap. It's super, super cheap. And of course, it has what Fuji is so well known for, which is their film sims. It has Provia, it has Astia, it has Velvia, it has no classic chrome. That came later. But it does have monochrome with the different filters, red, yellow, green. What else? Oh, and Pro Neg High. It has Pro Neg High as well. And then, of course, like the gimmicky sepia, which I do not know why manufacturers continue to include that. I don't know anybody who uses it, but it's there if you want it. When I started to play with the sort of film recipes that you can find online, that's when I was like, oh, I didn't get this until now. And it's funny because I tested a bunch of different film sims, film recipes, and I was like, whatever. I'm like not that impressed. And then I came across this one, and it changed everything that I felt about this camera. This one recipe has made me fall in love with this camera in a way that I cannot begin to explain, because now I have no problem with the EVF. Now I can deal with the slow autofocus because the output is so fantastic. Like all of these images that you have seen thus far have, unless otherwise stated, just been straight out of camera JPEGs. And I am super, super happy with them. And again, I just now accept what the camera is. It's slow. It's a little cumbersome. But even the manual focusing, I've gotten used to it. Like I feel like I'm super confident with it now. Whereas initially my first impressions were, yeah, I'm never going to want to deal with this. I actually loved this so much once I discovered this recipe that I decided to jump back into modern Fuji water. And I went crazy. I went and ordered the X-S20, the new beautiful modern hybrid camera, because I was like, maybe I didn't give the Fuji X100V a fair shake. I didn't really test the recipes that extensively and whatnot. So I ordered that camera. I played with that camera. And you know what? I felt the same way. I still didn't love it. I was just like, I don't know. There's something about the files that I just didn't love. Now, just to be clear, it's not that I dislike the X-S20. It's a fantastic camera. It's an amazing hybrid camera. There's a lot to love about it. And I could have just probably dialed these images in to really get them to a place where the JPEGs were hitting the way I would like. It does have a more modern rendering. It is the X-Trans4 sensor. And it's really just comes down to price, because this brand new without tax or shipping or anything like that is $12.99. For $1,000 less, you can get the X-E1 or even, frankly, the X-T1 if you are patient. It's just a hard sell. I tried a bunch of recipes, in fairness, quite quickly, but I felt they were inconsistent and in different light. They didn't produce the results that I liked. Whereas this recipe on this camera with this Fuji X-Trans1 sensor, there hasn't been one circumstance where I have been unhappy with the output of that JPEG. And while this does not have Wi-Fi, what I do is simply take this grip off, which is kind of annoying, I will admit. And honestly, you don't need it. I do like it. It gives it a little bit more heft, but there is a little bump here, and it's light enough and small enough where it is truly enough. And you can, I don't feel like you're missing anything. It's just, it came with this and I enjoy it. So I keep using it, but it's not necessary. Oh, I don't have the SD card in here. But what I will do is take my little dongle here. It's not a dongle, but it's an SD card reader. It connects right into my iPhone, which I can't find, but it connects right into my phone. I just pop in my SD card and download the files right to my phone, and I have them available. I never have to touch my computer. I never post-process. The other thing that makes this workflow so fantastic is I can go in here and I can raw convert and say, I'm going to bring this down 2/3 of a stop. I want to do 400. I can't do 400, but 200 dynamic range. I'd have had to have had a higher ISO. Then I'm going to go ProNeg high, actually ProNeg standard. And white balance, we're going to make sure we got daylight. And white balance shift, we're going to go there. And let's hit Q to process. And we're going to be like, oh yeah, I like that more. Okay, I'm going to save that. It just makes my life so much easier, and I'm really just enjoying that. I know that's the principle behind the modern Fujis as well, but I just did not love the output. So I returned the XS20, and I don't regret it. Now, I will say, I wanted a slightly more capable autofocus because this was hard to shoot my kids. I really did have to slow down and find circumstances where fast autofocus or fast manual focus were not requirements. And so I just went one generation up and I got myself a Fuji X-T1. The performance difference is marked. Like, this has way faster autofocus. It's a much more responsive camera. It has face detect. It has all kinds of things. It's weather sealed. So the challenge here is like, do I recommend the X-E1? I do. I really like it. And I'm actually not getting rid of it because as of yet, I have not been able to match the color output with the X-T1 that I get on the X-E1. So while it's still very good and I am still playing with it, and I do really like it, I still prefer the output in terms of color and dynamic range, actually, on the X-E1. That's not to say that won't change, but together, they make a wonderful complement. They also share the same battery, obviously the same lenses. So my sort of working theory is that I will carry these on my travels together. And when moments are slow and chill, I can use this. And then I also have a backup camera if one does fail on me. And then this one is for faster, more like, intuitive, responsive moments where I need to be able to capture things on the fly. This really holds up. Like, the autofocus is really snappy. It's, I was super impressed. Coming from this, I didn't expect much with one generation's change. But I think a big piece of that is this was contrast detect. This has phase. And that's a massive leap in terms of autofocus performance. But I will say I was wrong. Like I said at the beginning, I was kind of giving Fuji a lot of crap for being overhyped and overblown and just kind of annoying. But these old Fujis, I'm into it. Like, I really like them. And I kind of get it now. And to close this out, I'm just going to give you some quick updates on other things happening. I am going to be going to the KEH/Beers and Camera / The Darkroom meetup in Atlanta. So if you're going to be there, please let me know in the comments down below or DM me on socials. Go out there, have fun, play with cameras, bullshit with cameras, and then do things that are not camera related, because it will really do your soul well. So that's it. That's all I got for this one. I don't know what I'm going to shoot next. I haven't decided yet, but you will see on Instagram, I will start posting photos, 1 month, 2 cameras there. Join our Digi Discord, which I will put a link to down below for lots of chat around all old vintage digital and film cameras, mostly digital, but some film as well. I have 2 new film cameras I just got, so, or 3. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, I love you. Bye.